Thanks, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Happy Mother's Day. I'm totally going to get into that here in a second, but before I jump in, I want to give you guys a couple of announcements before we start talking about today. First up, we do have a Membership 101 coming up soon. It is on May 30th from 9 to 2. Lunch is provided. So if you want to know about our church, what we believe, what our mission is, why we believe we're here in Collinsville, it's a great time to come and just kind of hear and learn about what we're about, what we're trying to do with our ministries, with our church, the ways you can get involved, things like that. And we encourage every person that attends our church to at some point take that class just to be able to come and just hear a little bit about what we're doing. We'll have lunch provided for that as well, and Q&A is also open there too. So that is coming up on May 30th. And then we have been really building up this VBS because it's the first time we've done VBS in a long time. And in your guys' bulletins, we have we're starting to put these little flyers in there so you guys can hand them out to friends, family members, nieces, nephews, brothers, sisters, whoever may have kids that might want to attend our VBS. It is coming up very soon. In fact, today is our last sermon from our series, It Takes a Village, and we're going to be doing a 3-week series after this on VBS. To kind of get our church and our hearts and our minds set on how impactful our whole body can be to what we're doing with the VBS. So I'm super excited about that. So lots of things coming up for you guys to get yourselves involved in. Now, Mother's Day, right? Let's not dismiss and diminish Mother's Day. I want to, as Leighton talked about too, just the concept of Mother's Day, and I want to just show gratitude for all the mothers in the room, mother figures, everybody that has an impact from a mom's perspective. So I decided to get a list of the top 5 things that, moms want on Mother's Day. For some of you guys in the room, this is probably the most attentive you will ever be in church, is right now, because you have not done anything yet, and you know that you still have time after church to make some things happen. So, 5 things that moms want on Mother's Day. Start from 5, we'll move up. Number 5 is to grill out. They just want to grill. They want to sit around and grill, right? What? Number 4, going to the Cardinals game, right? They want to spend a lot of time at the Cardinals game. Number 3, golfing with the bros. Oh, wait, this is my Father's Day list, right? This is what I got lined up for Father's Day because my next one was a new Xbox. I don't think the moms want that, all right? So, no. So actually, what moms want, the top 5 things, it's funny how many women are like, no. At least I know you're paying attention today, so if I said something wrong, I know that you guys are listening, right? So, in fact, the top 5 things for moms is thoughtful gifts is number 5. They don't necessarily need to be expensive, just something personal, right? I try to get my wife cards written by the kids because when I buy them, she doesn't like them as much as when the kids are all doodling on them themselves, right? So thoughtful gifts, flowers, stuff like that, coffee, spas, those are expensive, ladies. Don't try to hide it. We know. We know what you spend on your nails and your massages. All right, acts of service is number 4. They want the house cleaned, men. They want their houses cleaned. Get it done. They want their laundry folded. They want it put away too, right? Exactly. Planning the day, handling the kids, getting it done. All those projects you say you're going to get done. Today's the day, man. Let's get them together. All right? They like number 3, handwritten notes or meaningful appreciation. They like it when we write things down. It's not just about what we say, it's about what we write. And for you guys like me, you might need a dictionary out because it's hard to spell sometimes, but they want to see the words on paper. All right? Number 2 is just a break. They want to rest. They want to go to sleep after church, guys. Let them take their look at the, I'm building a rally up here, right? We're gonna have a strike after this. They don't want to cook. They don't want to clean. They just want to rest. They want to have a peaceful day that ranks extremely high every year. That they look forward to Mother's Day because of the time that they get to themselves. Make these things happen today, men. But then last is quality time with family. That's what every mom wants. They just want to be with their family. They want to be with what made them a mother in the first place. And so getting a little bit of time with family is huge for moms on Mother's Day. So wherever it is on that list, I'm not saying y'all got to be at number 1, but you can find something in the 5 to show appreciation today. But as I was looking at this sermon today, as we were wrapping up this sermon series on It Takes a Village, and we spent the last, 4 or 5 weeks on this concept of we have to have a whole community effort if we're going to build a healthy church. It takes a village to raise a kid, and it takes a village to have a healthy church. And the principles in Scripture are no different. There's so many similarities and parallels that happen between the two. And when I look at this list for moms, what I tend to see when I look at it is that almost every single one of these things is something that a mom is going to need help with to accomplish. These aren't things that moms create on their own. They don't create these thoughtful gifts for themselves unless, once again, nobody else does, and then they go treat themselves, right? Because nobody's doing it for them. They don't have these acts of service unless, once again, nobody else is doing it. Then they have to do it all themselves because nobody served them. These handwritten notes are meaningful appreciations. They find ways to appreciate themselves because nobody's giving them that appreciation. The breaks and rest, they give themselves that when they can, but reality is that the only time they get breaks is when somebody else allows them to have that window for a break because of how they've chosen to step in. And then last but not least, how can you have quality time with family by yourself? And so what it seems to be to me is that when we talk about what we're talking about today, and we talk about this community, even on Mother's Day, it once again is an incredible parallel for moms to have healthy motherhood and for churches to appreciate healthy motherhood and for churches to appreciate unity in general. It does take a village to have this work. And so what we're talking about today can easily be paralleled to Mother's Day, but it also aligns perfectly with what we've been talking about the last few weeks on this idea of what it takes to have a healthy village. And so today's title for our sermon is, if you want the village, you have to build it. And this is the last sermon in this series, and I kind of told you guys from the beginning of the series, if you want to be a part of this series and you want to hear what's going on, you're going to have some thick skin, because there's some things that you might hear that you don't want to hear. There might be some things that are challenging, some things that maybe make you feel like you're not doing enough or you're not involved enough. And it's not about the church. It's not about here in Collinsville. It's about your relationship with God and His people and the people that He placed in your life. That's the challenge that we've set in place for our church. And as much as I would love to do this very seeker-sensitive, since it's Mother's Day, I don't want to offend anybody, and God doesn't take a day off. God's people don't take days off, and messages don't take days off because they're meant to challenge us and stir something up within us. And so if you came to Mother's Day service today thinking that it was just going to be another typical Mother's Day service, I am unfortunate to say that you will probably be challenged today, no matter who you are, son, mother, father, daughter, because it takes the whole village to have unity and to have health. And so we want to make sure we talk about that today, because biblical community thrives when every believer contributes, not just when people consume. And I know the main holidays, people come to church, Mother's Day, Father's Day, Christmas, and because they're hoping to consume something and get something. But man, being a part of God's body is all about contribution. It's all about building it, and it's all about having a piece of the pie to help everyone else grow as well. And so what we're going to be talking about today, what we're coming out of the passage we're coming out today, is 1 Corinthians 12. And Paul kind of, hits heavy this concept so many times. He talks about a body or the body, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. So you guys have some notes in your bulletins if you guys would like to follow along with us today. But man, we are hitting on this concept of, if you really want this village, if you're looking for the community, you have to have a part of it. You have a part to play. And Paul hits that perfectly in 1 Corinthians 12, verses 12 through 27. So let's read this whole passage, and then we're going to break it down today a little bit. And it says, Paul says, just as a body, though one, and I don't know if it's on your notes, but we do have it up here because it was quite a long passage, but we break it down throughout the points today. But it says, just as a body, though one, has many parts, all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit so as to form one body, whether Jews or Gentiles, slave or free, and we were all given the one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. Now, if the foot should say, because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. And if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, it would not for that reason stop being a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has placed the parts of the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you. And the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. Circle that. Indispensable. Oh, you guys can have it on your notes, right? Mental picture, right? And the parts that we think are less honorable, we treat with special honor. And the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty. While our presentable parts need no special treatment, but God has put together the body, giving greater honor to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honored, every part rejoices with it. Now you are the body of Christ, and each of you is a part of it. Man, long passage, right? Lots of context in there. Lots of things that Paul is talking about with the body, and he kind of got real detailed there. But the reality is that everybody wants community. Everybody wants support. Everybody wants the benefits of a functioning body. They want it to happen, but they don't ask themselves, many fewer people ask, what am I contributing to it? What is my role in it? Because the reality is that you don't find a healthy village. You know, you ever heard the church hopper mentality, that people are church hoppers, are trying to find the right church to go to, and they bounce from church to church. And the reality is that you will never find the perfect church, but you have to build one. You have to find a place that you can align with, and you have to plant your roots and build it. The grass is greener on the other side mentality is never true in church, because every church is composed of imperfect people, right? Every body of believers is imperfect. You have to find a body that you can choose to make your home and put your sleeves up and get to work and make it more perfect than it was before you showed up. And that's what we're talking about today, is the idea of being involved. And so the first thing, we're just going to talk about 4 truths today that talk about the idea of being involved. If you really want to have this community, you want the relationships, you want the friendships, you want a healthy children's ministry for your kids, you want a healthy marriage for yourself, you want a healthy group of guys for your husband, you want a healthy group of girls for your wives, you want your kids to be able to have peer relationships. You got to do something to help that. You don't just find a church and plug in to those things and hope that you just throw it at the church and the church will take care of it. And so if that's true, you have to build it. We have to identify some truths. And today we're going to talk about those. And the first thing is realizing, number 1, you are not extra, you are essential. Every single person in this room, whether you're a part of this church or not, I want you to know today, if you don't hear anything from this lesson, that you are essential in God's kingdom. Every single one of you today needs to hear that. That God has a plan for you, and God has a place for you in his church, but also in his kingdom. And so many people don't tap into this. That first piece of text in 1 Corinthians 12 through 20 hits that super hard. And then in Ephesians 2:10, it even backs that up, and it says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works." So circle the word created, and then circle the words to do good works, because that was a promise that God had laid out for every single one of us. You were created today, and maybe you haven't thought about that in a while, is why was I born? What is my purpose? Why? And you need to have those questions answered in life to fulfill life. Nobody wants to live life in question. Nobody wants to live life in doubt. Nobody wants to continue life not knowing what they're meant to do in life. Why were you born? Why was I here? I'm telling you right now through this verse, you were created to do good things. God created you to do incredible things, amazing things, every single one of you, and he prepared these things in advance. You might be in a season of life that you're saying, I don't know the next step. I don't know what God's pushing me towards. I don't know the direction of my life. Well, God does, because he prepared it in advance for you. And he wants you to know that he's not done with you. You see, every single piece is essential. You guys ever try to put a swing set together? For some of you men, you probably got to do it today after church, right? Because you've been, forgetting to, and it's Mother's Day, right? But You ever put something together that has like an assembly guide and there's always extra parts? It's because it knows that you're going to make a mistake, or you're going to drop a screw in the grass, or you're going to lose something, and it always has those backup pieces just in case something falls apart. Well, can I tell you something today, that that's not what God's kingdom is? You see, churches have that mindset sometimes that it's like a swing set, and there's all these extra people floating around, and they don't really need them. And they're saying, we already got our worship minister. You should just be in the crowd worshiping. We already got a children's minister. We already got, enough volunteers. You guys are just extras. You're just the ones that give the money to make sure they can keep doing those things. And churches function like a kit, and they say, these are the extra pieces, and that's who you are, and they identify you, and they don't enlist you. But can I be honest with you today that God's family is meant to look like a puzzle? See, there's no extra pieces in a puzzle box, right? And if you get that puzzle finished and there's a piece missing, you're like, where is it? Where is it? Where is that last piece? Because it's not going to be complete until I find that last piece and I put it in its place. That's the image of God's kingdom. And you are that last puzzle piece. Every single one of us has a part to play, and there's a place for us. And God has already prepared in advance, just like a puzzle has been prepared in advance to know what it's going to look like when it's done. And God is saying, I'm just waiting for you to put yourself in that place. Nobody else can fit that hole besides you. Nobody else on this earth, because I didn't create anybody else on this earth to be put in that place besides you. Romans 12, 4-5, Paul hits this again about the body. He says, for just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. You see, every believer has a role, and they're not all the same, and that's totally okay, but every believer has a role. And Paul uses this metaphor to dismantle the two biggest lies that people choose to say whenever they enter a church. One is, I don't belong. I don't belong here. I don't fit in here. This is not the right place for me. And Satan wants you to believe that, and he wants you to keep chasing other places. Maybe this is the place for me. Maybe this is the place for me. Maybe this is the right place for me. And what happens is we spend and we waste years of our lives trying to find somewhere that we belong, but the reality is that God has always had a home for us in his kingdom, and we should, this may not sound right today, but we should be able to join any body of believers and belong. Am I right? Because if we're all children of God, we should all be able to function together in unity. And so it shouldn't matter where we go as long as we're serving the same God. Am I wrong? And Satan wants us to believe that we don't belong with that group of believers, or we don't belong with this group of believers, because that's not how God created me to function with other Christians. I have to find the right kind of Christians to function with. Such a backwards thought process. And Paul dismantles that. But he also dismantles the metaphor of, I'm not needed. I'm not really needed here, man. There's 3,000 people in this church. Why would they need just me? I'm insignificant. I am not essential. I'm just an extra piece. Nobody would notice if I was there or not there on a Sunday morning. Nobody would notice if I was there or not there during a small group. And Paul hits that too, and he says, man, every piece of the body is needed. Every piece of the body is essential. Nothing is extra. And you were created with purpose, but you were also meant to be part of something so much bigger. But I think our problem a lot of the times is the issue is not whether we matter or not, it's whether we've chosen to get engaged. That's the slippery slope that we land on. God knows you matter and that you can have this impact, but have you engaged yourself in a way to see that you are God's handiwork or not? See, some people sit on the sidelines because they lack value. They think they lack value, but the reality is they've never stepped into the valuable position that God created them to be in the first place. You say, I'm going to reserve back because I'm not valuable. But God is wanting you guys to hear today that you are valuable and saying, I need to step in because I am valuable to God's family. And today could be that day, and finding your gifts and stop disqualifying yourself from things and take a step into serving in God's kingdom in some capacity, right? And so if we know that, and you know that you are essential in God's kingdom, then the second point we need to talk about is that the church, the reality is the church suffers when people stay disconnected. You see, the church, when it's a body and it gets cut and pieces get cut, it will suffer when things are disconnected. And that verse today in verses 21 through 26, it says the eye can't say to the hand, I don't need you, and the head cannot say to the feet, I don't need you. On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And we sit here, I don't need you, I don't need you. And we say to the church, I don't need you. And God knows how indispensable those pieces are. And we can say the same things, to each other on where we're at in life. How many times have you looked at your life and you've involved yourself and then you've reclused yourself, and you may not see the gap and the damage it does to the people around you because you're not present, but the church functions the same way. If a dad is absent, the family feels the impact, right? A lot of you guys know my story. My dad was not involved in my life. He was an alcoholic. He was not in my home at all. It drastically impacted because there was no presence there. And when people stay disconnected, it does damage. Now, maybe, I don't know, because I'm not my dad and I never got to have those conversations with him. I don't know if he felt guilt or conviction, or if he didn't even think to care and he was living his own life and not even understood the suffering that was happening or the disconnection because of him not being there. But we felt it, whether he was there or not, right? And I want to challenge you guys today, church, that when you disconnect, you may not understand the impact or the hole that you can leave around others whenever you are not connected to the body. Ephesians 4:15-16 says, instead, speaking the truth in love, we will grow to become in every respect the mature body of him who is the head, that is Christ. From him, the whole body, joined and held together by every supporting ligament, grows and builds itself up in love as each part does its work. See, each part's got a part to play. Is anybody cool with me chopping their arm off today and seeing if it will still wiggle around? Right? Somebody said do it, right? I heard somebody say it. Prince, come on up, buddy. Come on, you're closest, man. Come on. Bring the chainsaw out. No. So nobody's like, oh yeah, let's see if it will work. Let's see if it will stay alive, right? Let's see if it will still function. Let's see if I can see it laying on the ground and say, hey, can you check your phone, hand, and see if it will do it. Nobody's willing to do that because you know the cost of losing a piece of your body. It's no longer in control, and it's no longer having the function. It's no longer going to help the body. And God is saying that's the same thing because I am the head. And believe it or not, God is in control. If you surrender your life to Christ, you're surrendering your control to him. And he's saying, I'm going to lead you. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to help control your life in a way that's going to make it better than you could ever do it yourself. The hand doesn't think for itself, right? The hand thinks and it moves when I tell it to, right? Try to look at your hand and say, make a fist, and see if it does it, right? It won't make a fist until your brain tells it to make a fist. Isn't that so frustrating, right? To think that you're not in control of even some of the other things, but you are in control because you control the body. And so to look at the things of your body and say, it only responds when I tell it to. Well, what about those weird twitches I have, Jake? Well, that's not your body. That's not you, man. That's not your brain. That's just something going on in chemically balance in your body, and it's okay. Nobody needs to go to a doctor because Jake said something about that. But to have control of something, to have control of a body that's fully healthy and functioning is the goal that God has for his people. And he's saying you got to stay plugged into it. You got to be a part of it because the things that I'm doing in my kingdom are going to be so beneficial for your life. But you have to be a part of the body. You cannot live this isolated life cut off from the world and say, I'm still with you, God. You're still my head, but I'm not a part of the body. It doesn't function like that. It doesn't work like that because each part of us has a role to play in that. In Hebrews 10:24, it says, let us consider how we may spur one on another towards love and good deeds. And it talks about this principle of just knowing that the body has to help the body stay as the body. You know, spurring is not a pleasant thing to do. A spur is that spike you kick into a horse to get it to wake up and recognize, hey, you got a job to do, let's go, right? And the body does that too. And when one part of the body disengages, the whole body's affected. And when one part of the body gets sick or gets attacked by viruses or by sickness, the rest of the body kicks in, right? And it does everything it can to protect the body. And it attacks that part of the body to make sure that that part of the body doesn't get disconnected and cut off, but it tries its best to heal that part of the body. But it's an attack. It's an aggression. It's something that the body does in response to disconnection. But the body, like if I pricked my finger, the rest of my body's like, oh, no, that part's got to go. And it all, my blood cells just start moving around. Like they start running from that part of my hand and like, all right, cut it off. Like that's not how our body works. If there's a prick, says, oh, then the cells move to it. They heal it, they defend it, they protect it because they know it's essential to the body. And that's what I believe the Crossings Church is trying to do with our people. When somebody's disconnected, when somebody's hurting, we don't stray back and say, oh, it's time for them to go. They're not part of the body anymore. No, we lean in because that's what God would do. And we look at each other and we say, we're going to do everything we can to keep this body the body that God has called it to be. Disconnection doesn't just affect you. If you've been disconnected from God's people, it has not just affected you. That's a very selfish way of thinking of your life. I'm just going to retract. Nobody's going to think about me. Nobody's going to worry about me. Man, that's the farthest from the opposite with God's people. People will cry over you. People will be emotional over you because people want relationship with you because we know how much Jesus did for us to have a relationship with us. And we model the same thing. I was at this retreat, this conference a couple weeks ago, and this guy gave this story of up in Canada, there was this crazy snowstorm, and there was a man that had not been coming to church frequently. He had kind of disconnected himself, right? And the pastor ended up going to the man's house. This, super snowy, crazy storms, if you can think about that. Log cabin. This guy had a huge fireplace, and let's say that the guy's name was Bill, and Joe's the preacher. So Joe knocks on Bill's door, right? And he's got his big old coat on, and it's blizzard outside, right? And Bill opens the door, says, "Hey Joe, how's it been?" And they haven't seen each other in weeks because wife's been going to church, and she's been like, husband's been disconnected. He's just not been here. He's just kind of doing his own thing. And so after church, Joe goes and he opens the door, and Bill says, "How's it going?" And he says, "It's been good." And he walks over to the fireplace, and Bill's like, "You need anything? Are you hungry?" And he doesn't know what he's there for. And Joe's, warming his hands up at the fireplace, takes his coat off, takes his top hat off, and he sits there and he warms himself by the fireplace, and it's a big fire. And Bill keeps looking at him because all he's doing is staring at this fire. And then he takes the poker and he finds the hottest ember he can, and he pulls it out and he drags it out. And he puts the poker back and he just sits there and he stares at the ember. And slowly that burning red hot ember starts to turn orange, starts to dull, and then it goes black. And then he picks it up and he puts it right back in the fire. Sure enough, it gets orange, it gets bright red, and it gets superheated again. And he grabs his hat, he grabs his coat, he says, "See you Sunday, Bill." And he walks out the door. And that's all he said. And what the metaphor meant, and believe it or not, from what they talked about at Renew, was that man became one of the most active men in their church moving forward from that moment. He didn't even say anything. But is that not the greatest metaphor of what it's like to be disconnected from God's people? God's people are meant to function. They're meant to have a healthy fire. They're meant to be on fire. They're meant to contribute to one another. And when you take an ember out, it affects the whole fire. It does go down, but so do you. And if you're not careful, you will burn out. But believe it or not, God is a restoring God, and he will put you right back in that fire and put you right back where you were before you believe it. And you will start back on top, and you will make that flame bigger than it ever was. And that's the concept, and that's the belief that we have when it comes to making sure that you understand this connection is a huge, huge crutch to God's people, but more importantly to you. The flame will still burn. God's kingdom will still grow. God has a mission, and it's already in place, and he has already defeated Satan. That is going to happen. The question is, are you going to be an ember that's helping ignite that flame, or are you going to disconnect and burn out? That choice is all yours today when it talks about building a healthy village. Our third point is about consumer Christianity, right? Consumer Christianity breaks biblical community. This is where you high schoolers and college kids come in, because I was you once, right? And consumer Christianity breaks this biblical community. This is the whole theme of 1 Corinthians 12, talking about why do you come to church, right? For me, it was the food and the girls, right? Whenever I was young, man, whenever I came straight out of high school and I saw all this food at all these cross chats, and I saw all these pretty little girls wanting to give me attention and things like that, I was like, man, this is nice. This is a nice place to be. Everybody wants to say hi to me, and I was an athletic little dude, and I had a big ego, and, church kids normally aren't very athletic, let's be honest, right? And so the first thing I was invited to was a slow-pitch softball tournament at Lewis and Clark Community College, and the campus ministry at that time had a softball team, and they were terrible. It was so bad. A friend was driving an ambulance, and that's how I kind of came to church. I got connected to God's people. Was a guy driving the ambulance was in the campus ministry, and he had asked me to go to a softball tournament. And I grew up playing baseball. Like, I played baseball at SIU for a few years. I played my whole life, and so I was like, yeah, softball for sure. And believe it or not, my wife's brother, Tyler, if you've ever met him, was on that softball team. That's all you should need to know, all right? Because Katie's family are a bunch of wrestlers. They're not a bunch of baseball players or basketball players. And we have this running joke in that family that, what's really athleticism, if it's skill versus strength or agility or whatever. I'm like, listen, y'all are a bunch of wrestlers, and you can definitely beat me up. I know it. But you got to catch me first, because I'm pretty quick, right? And trust me, I'm going to get a head start, and I'm going to pick up some rocks because you don't know how to throw, and I'm going to knock some rocks at you because I know how to throw a baseball. I'm going to run some more and pick up some more, and I'm just going to keep slowing you down. Like, it's brains over bonds today, all right? I'm going to figure this out. But anyway, Tyler was on that softball team, and man, we were losing every game like, I don't know, 20. We were getting short-gamed every game, like 20-3, 18-4, 18 whatever. And most of those were because I was getting home runs and nobody else was even hitting it. But every time I came into the dugout, everybody's like, man, great job, great job. You're the best thing ever. Like, why aren't you playing professional baseball? And I'm like, why ain't I playing professional baseball? What am I doing with you guys? Like, I could be doing so much more than this, right? And it was crazy because when I first started coming around, everything was about me. Everything. Everyone just wanted me to see how much they cared about me, how much they loved me. And it took me a while to break that consumer-based mentality. Say, you know what? I see what you guys are doing. It's about me. That's how I feel. But what I'm watching being modeled is you not making it about you. You're trying to make it about somebody else. And I've just sat here and accepted it for so long. But I see what you're trying to do, because as you're doing that, you're showing me God's word, and you're loving me, and you're revealing how Christ laid it all out for us. And that's what you're doing for me. And you're hoping maybe I'm going to have that aha moment as well, that I should want to do that for someone else. And churches and young kids, they got to break that mold. Philippians 2:3-4 says, do nothing out of selfish ambition. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others. Man, I watched that modeled. That wasn't preached at me. That was shown to me at such a young age in my young walk as a college student, to watch how people serve me, how people love me. And it was only me that could go from a consumer to a contributor. I had to make that choice. The church is here to do both. The church is here to give you something, but the church is also here for you to give something to someone else. And only you can have that twist. Only you can have that mind break and say, it's time. It's time for me not just to consume, just like a village, right? Only a village survives when everybody realizes that they have a part to play and they have to contribute something to the village. Because if everybody focused on just getting everything, then nobody's going to be able to give anything. And that's how God's kingdom functions too. In 1 Peter 4:10 it says, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. See, the church was never meant to be a place to receive. It was a place to serve. You know, the consumer mindset says, what do I get out of this? Does this church meet my needs? Are there enough guys my age here? Are there enough people that can connect with me? Are there enough people that can share in the season of life with me? But Scripture teaches something completely different. Philippians says, put others first. 1 Peter says, use your gifts to serve others. The church doesn't function when everyone consumes, but it thrives when everyone contributes. So maybe that's a thought today. Who can I serve? How can I love? How can I get involved? Who can I encourage today? Mother's Day, great start there, right? How can I choose to be somebody that doesn't just consume on this day, but can find a way to contribute, but also not just to make it about a day, but to make it about a lifestyle? You know, one of the, statistically, people who struggle with anxiety and depression, what counselors say, it's a national study. The number one thing that helps people out of depression and get out of anxiety and get out of their own headspace on the things that they struggle with is service. Literally, whether it's a Christian or a non-Christian counselor, they will say, you should maybe try thinking about other people. Maybe you should not think so much about yourself. And I hope that's not an insensitive way to say that, but a lot of times when we sit in our own selves, that's what creates that, is the darkness that sits in, and I've been there. I've sat there and I've sat in my own depression. I've sat in my own sadness, and I've created that for myself because I didn't really care to think about anybody else but myself in those seasons. And it's not a switch overnight, but the reality is the more you think about others and the more you give to others and the more you serve to others, the more you do things the way that God called us to, the more it helps with those seasons of life. And we all go through different seasons and waves like that, but the goal is for God to help us identify we can't always be consumers. We can't always be getting the help. We can't always be getting, but at some point we have to enlist ourselves and give as well and find a healthy balance between the two. Because that brings us to our last point today, is that the last point is that your contribution strengthens someone else's faith. What you do is going to have a legacy on it. It is going to help the next generation, whether that's your own children in your own household, that your contribution is going to strengthen your children's faith, whether that's the friends that you choose to circle yourself around, that your contribution to them, whether that's your parents even, that the way you choose to serve them is going to help strengthen their faith. But you, like we talked about at the very beginning, you are so essential to God's plan that what you do is going to strengthen somebody else's relationship with Him. You may not realize that, but your presence and your words and your actions matter so much more deeply than you think that they do in God's family. There's so much impact that you have whether you think you do or not. Sometimes the best thing that can strengthen someone else's faith is just being there for them. It's not preaching it at them. It's not throwing a Bible at them. It's just being there. Knowing they're in a tough season of life. Knowing that maybe they're not going to turn over overnight. But just being consistent. Being intentional with your words and presence. Just being there in general. Look what it says in Romans 1:11 and 12. It says, I long to see you so that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to make you strong. But listen to this. He wants to give this right? He wants to serve. He wants to give them something so that you and I may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. You see, it's not only that you strengthen somebody else's faith, but by you serving, by you getting involved, by you contributing, it will also strengthen your faith. Just like Paul said. Hebrews 3:13 says, but encourage one another daily. Daily, as long as it's called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. There's a pattern today, right? The more you withdraw, the colder it gets, the darker it gets, the harder it gets. Sin's deceitfulness gets more prevalent as we recluse, as we separate, as we disengage, as we consume and not contribute. Matthew 5:16, in the same way, let your light shine. Kind of like a fire, right? Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Are you being mutually encouraged? When's the last time you've given somebody just the smallest bit of encouragement in their life? I've lived that rugged life as a grown man where I work a full day's work and I'm like, where's my encouragement when I get home and where's my dinner? Not in my house. My wife doesn't cook, right? I gotta make my own dinner. My wife is not the cook in the house, right? But I've had those seasons in life where I'm like, where's my appreciation? I've been working my butt off. Nobody said nothing to me all day. But you also know in those seasons of my life when I get the most grumpy and the most entitled, those are also the seasons that I don't say anything to anybody else. Isn't it crazy? That's the pattern, that when we feel so frustrated that nobody encourages us, that's like, my best season of life is whenever nobody really is lifting me up. That's when I find myself lifting everybody else up. It's the best season of life for me. Nobody says that. Nobody's like, the best season for me to make others feel loved is when I feel the least loved, right? It's so backwards. But once again, in a tribe, in a village, in a body, if everybody says that, then who's going to take the step? That's one of the most frustrating things to hear as a minister for however many years I've been doing this, is when somebody's like, well, they didn't get with me. They're not reaching out to me. They're not making an effort with me. If everybody said that, who's in the wrong, right? If everybody comes and says, nobody's getting with me, then who's the one in the wrong? Everyone's the one in the wrong because nobody's getting with anybody. And so when we have this spiral and people continue to say, I'm just waiting for them to reach out to me, that's not God's model at all. He wants us to take initiative. He wants us to contribute. And even when you don't feel appreciated, even when you don't feel encouraged, even when your marriage is a wreck and it's just so much attitude in the house, even when your kids are just psychotic because they always are and always will be, right? Even when all these things in life and seasons just never change, you don't get a hall pass to do exactly what God had called you to do. God says, despite how everyone else is treating you, you need to do this because it's going to help them, but you also need to do it for yourself because it's going to be good for you. Right? If God's answering all your prayers, why pray to Him in the first place? Why would we need to pray if God's already given us everything we need? Because it's good for you. If God already knows He's King, why do I need to worship to Him? Why do I need to sing to Him? God doesn't need our worship. Worship is something that's good for us. It's good for our hearts. Prayer is good for our minds. Serving is good for our bodies. God has given us the opportunity to do these things for others because He knows how much it's going to help them, but more importantly as well, how much it's going to mutually help us. And God says we have to have a part to play in that. And that's kind of what I want to close out today, is that challenging thought. Listen, church, if everyone in the church functioned like you do right now, what kind of church would this be? For some of you guys, that would be a pretty encouraging challenge. And for some of you guys, that might be a yikes. Would people want to involve their kids in a church like this based on your involvement with the kids in this church? Would people want to invite their neighbors to this church if they watched how you reach out and you socialize with people? Would high schoolers want to bring their high school friends based on how you get to know the high schoolers? Would older folks want to bring their older folks, right? Based on how you, and like I said, you're not in the context, but you have a role to play in all of that. If I'm a high schooler, I have a role to play in how I socialize with the older folks. I have a role to play in how I socialize with the college kids, how I socialize with the children's ministry. If you're an older folk, it's the same way, how you socialize with the high school. Like, there is no context to contribution. There's no context to contribution. It's a whole family's effort. And that's why I love the Crossings here. That's why I love Collinsville. And you've seen it the last few months, man. It is a family here. And it has been growing, not just numerically, but relationally. And I feel like this is a tribe. And if you're visiting with us today, we are inviting you to be a part of that tribe. And that invitation will never go away. This will always be a place. And maybe one day, maybe today's not that day for you. Maybe you're going to go through life and it's going to chew you up and spit you out. And this will always be a place for you to call home. And there will always be a place for you to contribute. And maybe today, maybe just maybe it's the day that sparks your faith and you go find yourself into a church and you plug yourself in at that church and you start building something there. And it's because of a message that you heard here in Collinsville. Either way is a win for Collinsville because God's people are finally getting involved wherever God's called them to be. And that's a place that we want to be that fosters that mentality. And so I don't know what you're looking for today. I hope that my words today were something that could really challenge you guys. If you guys could pull out this communication card, that is a great way for you to respond to whatever it is that God's calling you to contribute to. VBS is right around the corner, and man, we are making a huge push at the church here to make sure that the community knows that we're here, and the community knows that we're family. And it takes a village to have what we have here at the church, but it's also going to take a village to run a VBS. And so I encourage you guys to indicate on this card anything that you need. Once again, right? Comments or prayer needs, right? It's anything that you need because the church is a place that you can get help. The church is a place where others can contribute. And man, the goal, if you didn't hear it today, the goal is to get you to a place in your life that you can contribute to somebody else's faith. That is the goal today. But for that to happen, you got to take care of yourself. And you got to let others in. And that's where the church comes in. And so whatever it is, if you're struggling with addictions, if you're struggling with relationships, if you're struggling with marriage, if you're struggling with whatever it may be, man, let us plug in. Let our prayer team get their eyes on those things and pray for you. Let our ministries get eyes on those things and be able to connect with you and reach out to you. Just get a cup of coffee, get some ice cream, just get something together that you can kind of talk about where you're at in life. But I really encourage you guys to keep coming back. Encourage you guys to take advantage of the day, serve your mothers, spend time with your mothers, do what you can with your mothers. I think we have actually a gift for moms on your guys' way out too to let you know how much we care about you here at the Crossings. But what a great day. Beautiful weather, beautiful lesson, and a beautiful family. Let's pray. God, thank you so much for the impact that you have given us in this life, God, to know that we have so many opportunities to be essential in your kingdom. And God, I pray that everyone can walk out of this building today knowing that they're essential in your family. God, you created each and every one of us. You created every single one of us because you needed every single one of us. You wanted every single one of us. And God, I know at the end of the day, like I said, I guess you don't need us, but God, you want us so bad. God, you want us so bad, and that's why you created us. And God, we have to respond to that. And your family and your kingdom, there's so many more benefits that I found than trying to do it by myself. God, family is so important. God's family is so important. And God, you've modeled that so well. So please help me find a way to be more connected to the family, to contribute to the family, but more importantly, to be connected to you. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.